Hey, we're Camillo and Anouk and we converted our car, our 4x4 Mitsubishi Pajero, into a camper. Over the next few months we're going to travel along the Mediterranean towards the Black Sea.
We started our journey at the end of August and left the small village we live in behind. We had spent the last months buying, planning and converting the car. This was quite time consuming, so we are really looking forward to finally travel. Our plan is to drive from Germany over Austria to Slovenia and Croatia. In June we already made a little 2-week test tour to Slovenia to find out what we want to change, so we're not going to spend much time in Slovenia this time. We don't really have a travel route that is set in stone. We're thankful to have the flexibility of a car, so we're simply going to see where we want to spend time and for how long.
Everything is packed, now there's no way back. The things we've packed in the car are all the things we're going to own and use for day-to-day life over the next few months. In the evening of our first day, we decide to spend the night in a car near a river in Austria.
In the morning we eat breakfast at the river and take a look around the beautiful riverbank. The rest of the day we're going to spend driving. At late noon we decide to stay in the mountains of Slovenia near the Croatian border. We find a beautiful little camp spot in the forest and spend our first few days relaxing. We read, take little walks, and Nouki repairs her bike.
At some point of the conversion and building process, I almost forgot we would actually travel in the car at some point. There were so many things to plan and think about, the travelling part felt surreal and far away. So when we started our test ride to Slovenia, I didn't feel prepared, mentally. Living and travelling in our own car was a dream for so long, so that when we were ready, I felt a little overwhelmed. To be honest, the first days felt tough. On the one hand, I felt like living a dream, but on the other hand, living in the car is tough, especially if you feel insecure yourself. Changing sleeping place every few days, hearing every sound from around the car during night, and basically living on 3 square meters together. I knew I would usually see the adventure, the challenge, but at that point I felt overwhelmed and unsafe. But luckily that changed. I soon started to enjoy hearing the wind rise and fall at night, looking out of the car windows each morning to a new surrounding, and realizing how little you need while traveling.
Anouk and my parents decided to go on holiday together in Croatia and invited us over to their place. So we drove over the border to their Airbnb in the mountains of Croatia. It was nice to spend some time together and also with the friendly neighbor that showed us around the village in his van. Many of the houses here are empty and he told us about whole villages in the forest that are abandoned since the 90s. That caught our attention and he told us more about them and how to find them. So the next day we went on an exploration tour together with Anouk's little sister. The villages can only be reached with a 4-wheel drive car and some only by foot. One of the many reasons they were abandoned. We were told that the young people moved away from the remote villages, and when the older generation died, relatives didn't attend to the houses.
The first village we visit has completely fallen apart, only the outlines of the walls visible, trees growing in the houses. The other village is completely different. It was abandoned about 30 years ago. When we arrive from narrow forest passages, the houses lie before us on a clearing, forgotten in time, and nature, slowly but surely, doing its part by reconquering what once was hers. We first try to get an overview. There are 13 houses in very different conditions. We then have a look inside a few houses. Old cooking stoves, furniture, and furnished as you would furnish in the last century. When the villagers died of age, the houses in the forest were simply left the way they were. Coffee standing in jars on the shelves, honey in glasses on the table, bed linen nicely folded on the cupboard. We leave the houses as they are, in their eternal sleep. Some of the houses are used by refugees as temporary accommodations on their way west. We find sleeping bags and loads of clothing spread over the floor of one house.
The next day we forced ourselves to tackle a problem. We have a 70-liter fresh water tank in the car and every time we fill it from the outside we've got water in the car after a few hours. and that's not really ideal. So we borrow a cordless screwdriver from one of the neighbors and set to work to find the leak. Sobald das hier niedrig genug ist, kannst du das hochgeben, dass Luft darüber rein kann. After experimenting and trying a few things, we are sure that the tank is fine. After some more time, we realized that the water was pushed up the tube responsible for equalizing the pressure, and also some electrical stuff that had to be repaired.
After a few days with our parents, we head off further south. Suddenly, the landscape around us starts to change drastically. From lush green forests to bare, rocky Mediterranean plains. After leaving the highway, we drive on country roads, and next to one of these country roads, we see a huge building complex. No windows, graffiti, and obviously abandoned. We spontaneously pull over to get a closer look.
We later found out that this once was an aluminum factory that was built in the 70s and opened in 1978. It was closed 3 years later, but we couldn't find out why. The buildings were simply left to themselves.
Shortly after we arrive, we hear bells and then see 2 cows grazing happily on the rubbish-covered grass around the buildings. They even eat paper that lies scattered around all over the area. That's kind of a surreal picture. We later realize that the papers are blueprints of the factory building instructions written in German and Croatian. The grounds are enormously vast, buildings over buildings, the remains of industry all around. We have a look into the buildings. Here and there the concrete has cracked open and trees started to grow. We walk through the skeletonized complex. At some point a bird suddenly starts to sing from within a huge building we pass. Its tune echoing clearly and loud through the grey concrete giants. It all feels surreal. We find a freestanding staircase and decide to take some photos.
We spent a whole afternoon just wandering around the factory grounds, and in the later noon decided to finally drive to our actual destination and sleeping place. When we leave the country roads, only steep gravel paths go on.
This is our sleeping place, overlooking a beautiful valley with a broad river. We eat and enjoy the beautiful view while we are slowly getting eaten up by mosquitoes.
At 5 o'clock in the morning, we are woken by a cow grazing next to our car. We didn't know that there were so many cows in Croatia.
Good morning. So right now we're in this little valley, and we slept up above the valley in the car. I'm still a little tired because it's like, I don't know, 7:45. We tried to get up a little earlier than we usually do because it gets bright at 6 o'clock in the morning and it gets dark at 8. So if you sleep until 9, you missed 3 hours of sunlight. We went hiking yesterday and I found a few figs along the way. And right now there aren't so many people. The figs are still in the shadowy part of the valley. So I thought about picking some figs for breakfast. It's quite beautiful here. There's water all around. They call it a canyon, but this is the smaller part of the canyon. We are gonna drive to the canyon today. Yeah, we'll see. There are thousands of fishes here in the water, and the waterfall is quite nice. Most people walk here to see the waterfall. Yeah. While I was hunting figs in the valley, Camillo tidied up the car and prepared oats for our breakfast. The figs are a nice bonus to our normal oat breakfast. After breakfast, we pack everything and drive back the steep and stony path. This is the Salmania Canyon in all its beauty. They filmed parts of Vinnetou in this amazing area in Croatia. We arrived shortly before it got crowded, so we could take out our drone and have a look at the canyon from some amazing perspectives.
The following days we slowly drive away from the coastal area of Croatia, back to the inland. We take a look at a rather known lost place. Rijeka Air Base was the largest underground airport and military air base in Yugoslavia and Europe. It was made to withstand nuclear bomb attacks. We had a look into the gigantic and several kilometer long tunnel system. It's a little creepy inside though.
It took us quite a while to decide whether we want to visit Plitvice Lakes or not. They are one of the tourist spots in Croatia. There were direction street signs pointing up the way to the national park in a radius of 100 kilometers around the park. We decided to go because the park has unique wooden paths, is well taken care of and cleaned in comparison to many other lakes and national parks. But we stand up really early to avoid the tourist floods. At 7 o'clock in the morning, we are the first to enter the park. The sun hasn't yet made it over the surrounding mountains, so there's a beautiful morning dew and freshness in the air. We see animals that later hide away from the masses. The park is beautiful, crystal clear turquoise water, little fish floating in the water like in space, and the winding wooden paths which let you walk over water. We enjoy having the park by ourselves, and a few hours later we appreciate the loneliness and quietness of the morning even more. Slowly the park fills, people over people. At noon we squeeze our way over the wooden paths with thousands of other people, so we leave at late afternoon.
The next day we crossed the border to Bosnia Herzegovina. Bosnia is a completely different story. We are blown away in every sense. This country is beautiful, complex, and surprises us in every way.
We hope you enjoyed having a glimpse into our journey. We definitely had fun reconstructing our last weeks on the road. The cutting and recording audio part was a wonderful occupation for rainy and stormy days, which trapped us in Dakar. See you soon.